Some sci-fi movies do not predict the future. They crawl under your skin and stay there. What happens when technology stops feeling useful? The human body becomes unstable, and reality itself starts looking infected. These 12 R-rated sci-fi films go far beyond spaceships and laser guns, dragging viewers into mutation, paranoia, obsession, and nightmares disguised as progress. But the strangest one on this list may make you question what entertainment is really doing to your mind. Cube Zero, 2004. The cruelest thing about the cube is not the traps. It is the feeling that someone is watching, judging, and enjoying the experiment. Released in 2004, Cube Zero takes the already bizarre nightmare of the Cube series and makes it even colder by pulling us behind the walls. Instead of only following prisoners trapped inside a deadly maze of shifting rooms, this film shows the technicians monitoring them, recording them, and treating their suffering like office work. That twist makes the story feel less like a puzzle and more like a disturbing system built by people who stopped asking moral questions. What makes Cube Zero fit this list is its ugly sense of control. The rooms are sterile, mechanical, and almost emotionless, but the people inside them are terrified, bleeding, confused, and desperate to understand why they were chosen. The movie's weirdness comes from that contrast. Ordinary human panic trapped inside a machine that behaves like bureaucracy turned into murder. It is not the most polished sci-fi film ever made, but it has a grim little hook that stays with you. What if punishment, surveillance, and experimentation became so routine that the workers barely noticed the horror anymore? As a countdown opener, this one earns its place because it turns claustrophobia into a sick institutional nightmare. The Stuff, 1985. A killer dessert should sound ridiculous until you realize the real monster is the advertisement selling it to you. Released in 1985, The Stuff is one of those strange sci-fi horror comedies that begins with an absurd idea and then quietly becomes sharper than expected. A mysterious white substance bubbles out of the ground, tastes delicious, gets packaged as a trendy treat, and becomes a national obsession. People eat it, crave it, defend it, and slowly stop acting like themselves. On the surface, it looks like a goofy creature feature joke. Underneath, it is a nasty little satire about consumer culture, addiction, corporate greed, and how easily people can be persuaded to swallow something dangerous if the label looks friendly enough. The uncomfortable weirdness comes from the way the movie makes everyday cravings feel suspicious. Food is supposed to comfort us, but the stuff turns dessert into invasion. The horror is not just that the substance might be alive, it is that everyone wants it so badly they ignore the warning signs. That makes the film funny, gross, and strangely relevant. It may not have the sleek terror of bigger sci-fi classics, but it has a dirty, clever personality. This is the kind of movie that laughs while pointing at something real. Sometimes the future does not arrive through machines. It arrives through marketing. Brazil, 1985. This is what happens when the future does not explode. It drowns you in paperwork. Released in 1985, Brazil is a surreal dystopian nightmare where technology exists, but it does not save anyone. Machines malfunction, offices suffocate under forms, ducks snake through rooms like ugly metal organs, and every human dream gets crushed by a system too massive and absurd to fight. Instead of sleek sci-fi wonder, the film gives us a world where bureaucracy has become a monster, and the scariest part is how normal everyone pretends it is. The story follows a low-level worker who escapes into romantic fantasies while the world around him becomes more paranoid, cruel, and mechanical. That is where Brazil becomes uncomfortably weird. It is funny, but the comedy has teeth. It is beautiful, but the beauty feels trapped under rust, smoke, and official stamps. Every strange image seems to ask the same question. What if society became so obsessed with order that it forgot people were human? The film's power comes from that suffocating contradiction. It feels absurd, yet recognizable. It feels impossible, yet familiar. Among R-rated sci-fi nightmares, Brazil stands out because it does not need aliens or mutants to disturb you. Its monster is the system, and the system always has another form waiting. Beyond the Black Rainbow, 2010. Some sci-fi films explain the future. This one traps you inside a nightmare pretending to be a vision. Released in 2010, Beyond the Black Rainbow is not designed to move fast or comfort the viewer. It is cold, hypnotic, and deeply strange, set inside the Arboria Institute, a futuristic research facility that looks like a wellness center built by people who forgot what wellness means. The story follows Elena, a young woman with psychic abilities, held under the control of a sinister doctor whose calm voice feels more frightening than a scream. What makes this film so uncomfortable is its atmosphere. The glowing rooms, slow camera movements, pulsing synth music, and unnatural silence make everything feel drugged, controlled, and slightly inhuman. It is sci-fi as psychological captivity, where the real horror is not only what is happening to Elena, but how completely the system around her has turned cruelty into procedure. The movie feels like a lost artifact from an alternate 1980s future, full of sterile surfaces and spiritual promises gone rotten. It may test some viewers' patience, but that is also its power. Beyond the Black Rainbow does not simply tell a weird story. It makes you feel trapped inside someone else's damaged mind. RoboCop, 1987. Before superhero armor became clean and heroic, RoboCop made the future look brutal, corporate, and painfully human. Released in 1987, RoboCop is often remembered for its explosive violence and sharp satire, but underneath the metal suit is one of sci-fi's most disturbing identity stories. Officer Alex Murphy is not simply killed and rebuilt. He is turned into a product, a weapon, and a public relations tool by a corporation that sees crime, policing, and even death as business opportunities. That is where the film becomes uncomfortably weird. The future is not controlled by aliens or mad scientists, but by executives sitting around conference tables discussing human life like market strategy. Murphy's body is destroyed, then repackaged as technology, while fragments of memory keep breaking through the programming. The result is thrilling, but also tragic. Every time RoboCop moves like a machine, the viewer is reminded that a man is still buried somewhere inside. The film's satire is loud, violent, and almost cartoonish, yet its emotional core is surprisingly painful. RoboCop earns its place because it turns the fantasy of becoming stronger than human into something darker. What if the future does not upgrade you, but owns you? Alien, 1979. Deep space was supposed to be empty. Then Alien made it feel biological, invasive, and hungry. Released in 1979, Alien changed sci-fi horror by stripping away the glamour of space travel and replacing it with sweat, metal corridors, industrial noise, and a creature that felt less like a monster and more like a violation of nature. The crew of the Nostromo are not heroic explorers. They are tired workers doing a job, arguing over pay, procedure, and survival, which makes the nightmare feel frighteningly ordinary. The uncomfortable weirdness begins with the design of the alien itself. From the facehugger to the chestburster to the fully grown creature, every stage feels connected to the body in a way that is disturbing without needing constant explanation. The horror is not just being killed, it is being used. That idea gives the film its lasting power. It turns birth, infection, machinery, and darkness into one long nightmare. The ship feels like a tomb, the creature feels impossible to understand, and every shadow seems alive. Alien belongs high on this list because it made sci-fi feel intimate in the worst way. It proved the most terrifying thing in the universe might not be the unknown. It might be what the unknown does inside you. A Clockwork Orange, 1971. The most disturbing future may not be full of machines. It may be full of people who have learned to enjoy cruelty. Released in 1971, A Clockwork Orange is a dystopian sci-fi nightmare that does not rely on aliens, robots, or space travel. Instead, it imagines a society rotting from the inside, where violence, control, punishment, and entertainment blur into something deeply uncomfortable. At the center is Alex, a charismatic young criminal whose behavior is horrifying, but whose forced rehabilitation raises even darker questions. The film becomes weird because it refuses to let the audience feel safe in one simple moral position. Alex is dangerous, but the system that tries to fix him is also cold, theatrical, and deeply invasive. The famous conditioning experiment turns free will into a government procedure, asking whether a person is truly good if they are simply programmed to behave. Its futuristic language, stylized costumes, strange music choices, and exaggerated social world create a mood that feels both absurd and sickeningly controlled. A Clockwork Orange earns its place because its sci-fi is psychological and political, not mechanical. It does not ask what technology will become. It asks what society might justify when it becomes afraid enough. The Skin I Live In, 2011. The most terrifying prison in sci-fi is not always made of steel. Sometimes it is made of skin. Released in 2011, The Skin I Live In is a sleek, elegant, deeply unsettling blend of science fiction, psychological horror, and revenge tragedy. On the surface, it follows a brilliant plastic surgeon, Dr. Robert Ledgard, who develops a synthetic skin resistant to burns and injury. But behind the polished rooms, expensive furniture, and clinical calm, the film hides something much darker, a story about control, identity, obsession, and the horrifying arrogance of treating the human body like a personal experiment. What makes this film so uncomfortable is how beautiful it looks while becoming more disturbing with every reveal. The science is not presented as futuristic spectacle. It is intimate, surgical, and quietly invasive. Every locked door, every medical procedure, and every calm conversation adds pressure until the viewer realizes the real horror is not just physical transformation, but stolen autonomy. The film asks what happens when genius loses morality and love mutates into possession. The Skin I Live In earns its place because it turns identity into a nightmare you cannot simply escape. It is not loud sci-fi. It is controlled, elegant horror, and that makes it even colder. Under the Skin, 2013. This is alien cinema stripped of comfort, explanation, and almost every familiar emotion. Released in 2013, Under the Skin is one of the strangest sci-fi films of the modern era because it does not behave like a normal alien story. There are no big speeches, no invasion armies, and no heroic battle for Earth. Instead, the film follows an unnamed alien figure moving through Scotland, observing men, luring them, and slowly encountering the confusing, fragile reality of human life. The discomfort comes from how detached everything feels. Streets, faces, conversations, and bodies are filmed with an eerie distance, as if the viewer is also learning what humanity looks like from the outside. The film's most famous sequences feel like nightmares made of silence. Men walking into darkness, desire turning into danger, and the human body becoming something vulnerable and strange. But the film grows even more unsettling when the alien begins to experience fear, curiosity, and confusion. Suddenly, the predator is no longer completely separate from the world it studies. Under the Skin belongs near the top because it makes science fiction feel genuinely alien again. It does not explain the monster. It makes you sit inside its loneliness. The Thing, 1982. The horror is not that something is outside in the snow. It is that it may already be sitting beside you. Released in 1982, The Thing is a masterpiece of paranoia, isolation, and grotesque transformation. Set in a frozen Antarctic research station, the film follows a group of men who discover an alien organism capable of perfectly imitating other living beings. That premise alone is terrifying, but the film's genius is how it turns every room, every glance, and every silence into a possible threat. What makes The Thing uncomfortably weird is its body horror. The alien does not simply kill people. It reshapes flesh into impossible forms. Faces split, limbs twist, creatures erupt from bodies, and identity itself becomes unreliable. The practical effects are shocking, but they are not just there for disgust. They make the paranoia physical. If anyone can be copied, then trust becomes dangerous. Friendship becomes risky. Survival becomes a guessing game with no clean answer. The setting makes it even worse. Endless snow outside, suspicion inside, and nowhere to run. The thing earns its high ranking because it turns the human body into evidence you cannot trust. It is not just scary, it is biologically offensive in the best possible way. The Fly, 1986. This is not just a monster movie. It is a tragedy where the monster knows exactly what he is becoming. Released in 1986, The Fly remains one of the most emotionally devastating body horror films ever made. The story begins with scientist Seth Brundle, whose teleportation experiment accidentally fuses his DNA with a fly. At first, the change seems exciting. He becomes stronger, more energetic, almost superhuman. But that brief thrill slowly curdles into one of cinema's most horrifying physical declines. The uncomfortable power of the fly comes from watching transformation as both science fiction and personal collapse. Seth does not simply turn into a creature overnight. He deteriorates. His body changes in stages. His behavior grows unpredictable. And his relationship with Veronica becomes heartbreaking because love cannot stop what is happening. The film is grotesque, yes, but its real impact comes from sadness. Every wound, every mutation, and every desperate explanation feels like a man trying to intellectualize his own decay. That makes the horror painfully human. The Fly deserves the second spot because it turns scientific ambition into a slow funeral for identity. By the end, the weirdness is not just visual, it feels emotional, intimate, and tragic. Videodrome, 1983. The weirdest future is not one we enter. It is one that enters us while we are watching. Released in 1983, Videodrome is the perfect number one for this list because it takes entertainment, technology, violence, hallucination, and flesh, then melts them into one disturbing vision. The film follows Max Wren, a television executive searching for extreme programming who discovers a mysterious broadcast called Videodrome. At first, it looks like forbidden media. Then, it starts changing him. What makes Videodrome so uncomfortable is the way it treats screens as something physical. Television does not just influence the mind, it seems to invade the body. Max begins experiencing hallucinations where technology breathes, flesh opens, and reality loses its edges. The film feels prophetic because it understands something frightening about media obsession. Once people crave stronger images, the boundary between watching and being controlled can become dangerously thin. Its body horror is surreal, but I